America is voting on its future. The wealthiest New Yorkers, too.
To me, we have to fix the pandemic so that we can fix the economy. The gap between rich and poor in this country is wide, and it's getting wider.
New York was hit hardest by the pandemic, and the poorest worst affected.
If Trump get re-elected, I do see nothing is really going to change from how is it right now. It's just going to get way worse.
The coronavirus put the focus on social injustice, right in the middle of an election year.
Only one person of the two candidates even acknowledges the systematic racism in this country. We need someone who can bring together the country, who can unify the country.
8 months, one city, three worlds. The city's upper, middle and lower classes. This film shows an idealised city traumatised while taking a look behind New York's glittering facades and lays bare one of America's biggest failings, inequality. Spring 2020, and actor Kevin Smith Kirkwood takes a walk on Broadway. Theatres are closed. He and his colleagues are out of work.
This is really intense. This is very intense. And it's scary not knowing when there's an end in sight. There were some pretty dark days, you know, because that fear set in, and our business is already filled with insecurities and times of insecurity, but to have no idea of anything on the horizon.
New York confirmed its first coronavirus case on March 1st. 2 weeks later, the city started going into lockdown. By the end of the month, the US metropolis had become an epicenter of the global pandemic. Sirens, the only sound to break the silence in a city usually pulsing with life. New York's world-famous theatre district Broadway closed quickly. In a normal year, it would attract millions of visitors. It's where Kevin had fulfilled his lifelong ambition to become an actor and singer, an ambition he reached despite the odds.
A little black gay kid from the ghetto of Toledo, Ohio, who saw his dream come true. You know, I spent 6 years in this building, you know, winning the Tony Award and performing at the Tonys and winning the Grammy Award.
His breakthrough came with the award-winning musical Kinky Boots, which saw Kevin also dress up as a woman. He was finally on the verge of his own directorial debut at a small theatre outside New York.
I was just starting to feel like I had a footing in the industry, you know, and then this happened.
A few blocks away from Broadway, Tiffany's on Fifth Avenue. That's where Emerita Ramoon works, or did, until March.
My job was to package any retail items that came downstairs. If a customer called or ordered online, it would come downstairs, I would check it, examine it, wrap it up, and package it for shipping.
Her personal take on the world is a very different one. Emerita lives in a high-rise in the South Bronx, New York's poorest borough. Tiffany's gift boxes remain empty. Emerita pays $1,300 for a two-room apartment, a rent that was manageable while she still had a job. Emerita's parents came to New York as Latin American immigrants and ended up somewhere that couldn't be further from the affluent center of Manhattan.
As a little girl, my mom would watch all these old movies, and one of her favorites was Breakfast at Tiffany's. I understand why. You know, walking in front of this store was like a big thing for Audrey Hepburn, you know? You want a lavish lifestyle. So my thing as a young female living in New York, that's what I always embody for myself, and I made my breakfast at Tiffany dream come to pass.
Now the dream is over. Emerita no longer has her job. She has to send her children to stay with other family members because money's so short. The Bickley family has gone to stay in their summer house in the Hamptons, 2 hours' drive from their Manhattan apartment. The daughters are fashion influencers and can work from anywhere.
Just a fun fact about my closets, I work with a girl who is a professional organizer, and she came out here before I arrived in the Hamptons and organizes my closet by color and category.
Father Ian became a multimillionaire at the luxury goods brand Coach. Today he is an independent director for the shoe company Crocs and a board member of the cosmetics firm Natura.
Success is the intersection of hard work and good luck, good fortune. And I really do believe that.
Here she is.
Mother Kim manages her 2 daughters, Sophie, who's 28, and Charlotte, who's 26.
You know, they're sisters, so sometimes I just try to keep everyone focused and calm.
Sophie and I like to refer to ourselves as fashion bloggers, influencers, I would say.
prefer influencers and like content creators.
Yeah. But what we do from like as a job standpoint is basically just we like to look at ourselves as honestly people who are recommending things to people and trying to influence in like a positive way.
In a positive way.
For the 2 sisters, the pandemic means influencers are more in demand than ever. For some, quarantine outfits are the in thing.
Yeah, that's better. It's such a cute outfit, so different.
Thank you. Yeah, perfect. Perfect. People are like bored at home, like shopping online. A lot of sales are going on. So people are just scrolling through Instagram all day because they don't really have anything else to do. I was really pushing people buying masks. People definitely are judgy a little bit about it because it's like people are losing their jobs and things like that.
And we're focusing on like clothes and whatnot, but
it's our job.
Yeah.
Some people just don't understand.
But we're
sometimes.
sensitive about it.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, we try to be.
The metropolis of extremes and the pandemic. By April, New York is experiencing days that will deeply scar the city's collective memory. Under lockdown, anyone who can stay at home does so. As many as 800 people a day are dying in the city's hospitals. Bodies have to be stored in refrigerator trucks behind the clinics. Why was the city so badly affected? And who was the pandemic affecting worst?
There was 2 groups. Those who had the means to leave or the means to work remotely, and the rest of the folks, the rest of us people that had to go to work to continue the system for the people who could stay home and the people who are able to go to Hamptons.
Although this divide existed in the city long before the pandemic, it has now become a matter of life and death. New York, with its 8.4 million inhabitants, 5 boroughs, all divided into unequal neighbourhoods. There are parts of Manhattan where almost everyone is white, but that's not the case in the Bronx, where people of colour are the majority. In New York, there's a close correlation between skin colour and income. Residents in the poorest parts of the Bronx and Queens are mostly black or Latino, and it's here that most New Yorkers are dying of the coronavirus. Health is a luxury not everyone can afford.
Out of top 25 out of 30 zip codes were in white, wealthier neighborhoods. And the people who were being hit the most were in the poorer black and brown communities, immigrant communities, that weren't getting tested.
Coinciding with the end of lockdown, anger spills over. The death of George Floyd in Minneapolis on May 25th sparks days of protests after he's shown suffocating with a white police officer kneeling on his neck. There are protests in New York and throughout the country. unrest and looting overshadow the peaceful protests at racism and social injustice. The mood is further inflamed by police brutality directed at anyone, black or white.
When you combine the COVID virus with the virus of racist cops, you're going to have an explosion. And that's what you are witnessing.
Those are the folks out in the streets who are getting sick. Yet it is also the people who are being targeted by the police unfairly.
The protests go on for months. For Emerita Maroon, racism is an all too familiar part of life.
I'm not a color. You're not a color. You're a human being, and that's how you should carry yourself. But once you put a title on yourself, it changed everything. And I think that's the problem with people in today's society.
She knows the chance of catching COVID-19 in this district is much higher than in Manhattan.
As you can see in this neighborhood, it's not a lot of funds. So a lot of people don't have insurance to go. And if they are sick, they don't want to go to the emergency room because they don't have it to pay. In neighborhoods like this, you're going to get hit very hard when stuff like that happens because it's a poor neighborhood. Poverty.
Within a kilometre radius of Emerita's house in the South Bronx, 10% of residents define themselves as white. The average annual household income is just shy of $27,000. Almost half the residents here live in poverty or are at risk of poverty. Before the pandemic, 13% were unemployed. In May, the area was among those with the highest number of coronavirus cases.
I did hear some tenants did have it, and some passed.
It's June, and Emerita hardly leaves her apartment. She's waiting and hoping for a job and to see her sons. One of them is spending lockdown with his father. The other son is with Emerita's mother. Emerita herself couldn't afford to feed them all.
It's about to be, what, 3 months? 3 months without seeing my kids physically. I see them through video, talk to them, but physically touching them, physically hugging, 3 months.
What's up, guys? I'm getting my nails done.
The Bickley family were able to remain together during the pandemic, and they have paid help. Mexican nail designer Alicia is on a house visit today.
I have 4 kids, so I'm afraid for my kids, especially. Yeah.
So why did you do it?
Because I need money. Yeah. My husband and I, we stay home for 2 months, so now we start to work a little bit.
Mom, what do you want to do?
Alicia earns $150 an hour.
And we'll eat out here and we'll have wine and rosé.
She's prepared to take the health risk in order to earn that kind of money. For the Bickley family, work doesn't entail a health risk.
We're extremely fortunate to have the choice of being here versus in New York City when things are like this. Not everybody has a choice.
The city is one of the most inundated places with the virus right now, and also we're so fortunate to have a backyard to go out on, and a lot of people are just stuck in their apartments.
The virus reaches the Hamptons in April, but arrives more slowly than in New York City. Within a kilometre radius around the Bickley home, 90% of residents define themselves as white. Around 2.6% live close to or below the poverty line, and pre-pandemic unemployment levels were under 2%. At the peak of the crisis, 7 times more people were dying in New York than in the Hamptons. So how do society's more privileged members deal with such social injustice during a deadly pandemic? Is it okay to carry on showing off one's wealth?
Can we fix it to make hair?
I'm sensitive about what the girls post on their Instagram all the time. I'm like,
really?
Why?
I never post
Well, you know,
that on my Instagram.
I mean, but that's my opinion. It's their brand, and they should do what they want to do with their Instagram. You know, it's not for me to say or to control it. It's their brand.
People just don't like. I mean, people sometimes.
If it was my brand, I wouldn't do what they do. But that's not.
Dad, what are you talking about?
I'm not yin to my yang. I'm talking about. I'm not yin.
Anything like
No. I'm just saying, your brand is about you guys, your lifestyle, young. You know, that's what it is. That's what I think is magnetic about it and what attracts people. And I'm just saying, it's not my particular brand or lifestyle or what I would choose to post if you've seen my Instagram.
Okay, yeah.
I do something different. I have my own brand and my own things that I want to do.
We got it.
Kevin lives for performing, but now his life is an intermission. An actor and singer without any earnings, and perhaps more importantly, without a stage. Although, not exactly.
You alone are my heart's desire, and I long to work.
For Kevin, church has taken the place of the theatre. It's a window on the world, even if the audience is only virtual.
Yearning for you.
The first few were like, oh, this is kind of weird. This is kind of kooky. And then I got, used to it as best as I could. It's not as fulfilling, to be able to look into people's faces and hear them singing along with you and standing up and clapping and waving their hands. It's a much different experience. So it's been a challenge for me to try to keep my performative energy up.
Speak candidly as a pastor, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't preach. Maybe we should just sing the whole time because it's so, spirit-filling, and so uplifting.
Morning, church. Let us pray.
People have lost mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers. People are suffering. They feel lonely. They feel isolated. They've lost loved ones. And so there's kind of it was a heavy, heavy mood. And it was difficult pastoring in that context.
We call to you as a source of comfort and strength. What the son needs not is a reinforcement.
Religion is an anchor for Kevin, especially now. Like for so many others, enforced isolation is tough.
Being able to come here and still getting to worship, and getting to sit and listen to the pastor's, sermon like firsthand and be in the space, has been amazing for my anxiety levels and my stress levels.
Amen. It's too hot in here.
After church, back in Queens. Kevin's neighborhood, Astoria.
This neighborhood is fun and eclectic and ethnically mixed and diverse. It's a great shopping area and shopping district. It's a great middle-class neighborhood, lots of families, lots of young people, young transplants.
In the 1 kilometre area around Kevin's apartment, 74% of residents define themselves as white. The average annual household income is around $74,000. 11% live around or below the poverty line. Before the pandemic, around 5% were unemployed. The number of coronavirus cases here in April was around 40% below the New York City average.
I felt very safe, actually, during the pandemic. I felt like this was a good neighborhood to sort of weather the storm and I felt a little bit protected. I felt really lucky that we were not at the epicenter of infection. But economically, the slowdown has been harrowing.
Emerita Ramoon doesn't feel at all safe in the Bronx. But now, she's got something to look forward to. Her youngest son, Isaac, is coming home in 4 days' time. The 13-year-old has just finished his school year online.
There wasn't in the meeting this morning either? Yes, you made it to the 8th grade. Great. You should be very proud of yourself regarding the circumstances you was put in at a short period of time. and you didn't lose focus of anything. You fell behind a little bit, but you was able to, you know, catch up. And I told you, it's not how you start it, it's how you finish it. So you finish strong and give yourself a round of applause. But the social studies and everything else is like...
Isaac has been living with his grandmother.
And you could read it and answer it, so I'm very excited for him to come home. I love smelling my kids. I just love smelling, you know, just sniffing their hair, sniffing their neck, because it's something about a kid's smell, you know, and it just takes me back to when there was a baby. Like, oh my goodness, I remember your smell.
It's June, and after almost 3 months of total lockdown, New York cautiously begins to open up again. Some businesses, like hairdressers, are allowed to reopen under certain conditions. At the same time, the effect the pandemic has had on New York is becoming clear. Unemployment has risen to above 20%, almost the level it was at the time of the Great Depression. Our research shows that in May, 1 million New Yorkers were suddenly left without work. The number of people who could no longer afford to feed themselves doubled to over 2 million. A crisis already existed. The coronavirus exacerbated it. Anyone who can afford to do so has already left the city. By early May, almost a quarter of New York's uptown apartments are empty.
This country is very, very wealthy. The reason that we don't meet the needs of our poorest citizens is not that we don't have the money. It's that we have had years of tax cuts and tax loopholes and, quite lax treatment towards outright tax evasion.
There are people actually who are literally getting richer as this pandemic goes forward. And we are afraid to ask them to do civic duty by just paying their fair share. And we immediately have to ask people for true millionaires, for true billionaires, fairness fees to help deal with this budget.
It's July the 1st, not far from the Bickley residence. The poor of New York protest at the gates of the city's rich. Legislation has been passed to cut welfare spending using the savings to plug the massive fiscal hole left by the coronavirus pandemic. The protesters are demanding that instead of punishing the poor, the city should tax its billionaires.
The rich can continue to live their lives while we have to queue up in endless lines for a meal.
The protest doesn't make it as far as the Bickley family's house. Ian would be prepared to pay higher taxes. He tries to play his part.
JP, how are you doing?
He's become a mentor to people like James, his former intern, who's just finished college.
Retail, we're growing and came into 2020 excited.
Yeah.
And for me, as I'm looking at my job search now, it's challenging.
This is what I try to also say to myself every day. I think this is a moment in time.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I want to do something that I'm passionate about, that I'm excited about.
For Sophie, the everyday life of an influencer doesn't stop because of the coronavirus.
Hey, Mama.
In Southampton, shopping is allowed again, with a mask. In this bastion of the ultra-rich, there's barely a sign of the catastrophe ravaging other parts of the country.
I would just say it's like an idyllic seaside town, because remember the ocean's just down here. And it's a summer place, but it's a year-round as well.
If you're in New York City, you go to the Hamptons, and that's pretty much what it is. So any equivalent of like a summer town in Germany, that's what the Hamptons is for us.
The next day, back in the Bronx, Emerita waits to see her son, Isaac, for the first time in 3 months.
Last week I got cut by...
Her brother brings him home.
Hey guys.
What's going on, man? I'm just really excited like that. The last time I seen my baby was like in March or something. And now he's actually here, so that's good. He's healthy, he looks tall, he looks amazing. My son was like right here, now he's here.
Mother and son are hoping that life can get back to normal.
He's home, Mommy. Yeah.
I made it. Okay, check it up already.
He looks good. He looks good, he's all big, tall. Oh my goodness.
It feels better than my home. I like it. I like it here. It feels different. It feels much safer than before. Much larger too.
Today, nothing's going to spoil their mood. But for Emerita, more financial hardship is already looming on the horizon.
Camera rolling, take 6. March 11th, 2020 was the last day of what I knew as normal.
Kevin is putting on a performance in his own front room. It's part of a theatre project that combines monologues and dance, documenting New Yorkers' experiences of the pandemic. The director gives instructions via conference call.
Ask yourself, how is this
Kevin's role, a choreographer who feels totally blown off course by the lockdown.
As an artist, I connected with being lost at the beginning of COVID, not knowing where my art and inspiration was gonna come from. To take this art and use it to help work through my own feelings, it was really awesome. And that's one of the beautiful things about what actors get to do.
All right.
You look so cool.
Dance might help Kevin process the experiences of the past few months, but it won't earn him much money.
I'm so happy. You're such a beautiful dancer. I've never seen you dance like that.
In addition to unemployment benefits, Kevin gets around $600 a week coronavirus subsidy. But now that scheme is to be wound down.
I'm optimistic. I generally am positive. I don't think they're gonna be able to justify cutting that $600 totally. I think so many Americans would literally fall off a financial cliff. I wouldn't be homeless. But with the $600 and the base, I am able to pay my bills.
But that's exactly what happens. It's August, and in New York, case numbers have fallen significantly. Even the Rockefeller Center is open to visitors again. Kevin has to dig into his savings because there are no more subsidies available. Ian Bickley is back in the city. He shows us his apartment on Manhattan's upscale Upper East Side.
We have these little guardrails for our lovely dogs who love to destroy things.
They've hardly used the apartment, luxury space left empty, while many New Yorkers don't know how they'll be able to pay next month's rent.
Look at someone like me and look at our family and look at the life that we have and that we lead. We have not been so affected by COVID-19, certainly from an economic standpoint, because of the opportunities that we have and the flexibility that we have options. But a lot of people don't.
Emerita Ramoon can't afford her rent, and now she's paying in installments. She's been saved by a food bank in the apartment block basement. Canned foods and pasta to get her and her son Isaac through this difficult time. Emerita is in free fall, but there's no social welfare net to catch her, and she's not the only one.
Among those who are declared eligible, we only see, on average, about 70% of them actually getting their unemployment check. That's even lower for African Americans. It's only about 55%.
The reason, overburdened bureaucracy, and one that makes many mistakes. Emerita stays strong for her son. Gardening in the backyard is her therapy.
How am I supposed to tell my son at night when I tuck him in, you could be whatever you want to be. This too shall pass. God is a good God. And then I'm in the living room, oh my God, the bills, being doubtful. Can't do that.
Evening on Manhattan's Upper East Side. Ian's having dinner with his mentee, James. It's the first time they've met in person for a long time. James has great news.
So Ian, I got a job working at a real estate company based in New York. Small developer, but a lot of great people, and they were able to offer me a full-time opportunity despite everything going on right now. Looking towards the future, things are certainly less certain than they were 8 months ago, but I think if everyone kind of does their part and does the things that they're supposed to do, everyone will be in a better place.
I still do think it's a moment in time. However, I at the same time feel like the crisis is much deeper and worse than I did several months ago. A lot more people are unemployed. That means there's a lot less spending. That affects other businesses, so it becomes a vicious circle.
In the Bronx, the mood is growing tense.
Your roommate.
Emerita is holed up in her apartment with Isaac. Since the start of the summer, the number of shootings has kept rising. In August, it was more than double the number in the previous year.
It's only, 8 o'clock, and all it is happening.
Sometimes partying can descend into a shootout in just a blink of an eye.
After a while, you get used to it. The guns start sounding like fireworks. You can't tell the difference between guns and fireworks until you wake up the next morning and you heard, oh, it was a shootout last night.
You're not going to chase my nephew to the death.
With all the things that we just came out of, it's not getting better. It's getting reckless.
The shooting can happen near you, and then if you witness it, and if they see you, you gotta book it. You gotta run.
For Kevin, things start looking up in September. Everything he thought he had lost has suddenly become possible again. In New Hampshire, the first theatre is opening up again, and he's directing the production.
I'm very excited. I've been so inspired over the past week, because this transpired within the past week and a half or two. So, solidified over the past week, and I've just been so inspired, coming up with choreography and ideas, talking about costumes and lighting, dancing in my kitchen.
The theatre is nearly 600 kilometres away, but at least Kevin gets to make his directorial debut. Now it just needs to get off the ground.
I wanted to do it immediately. I jumped at the chance. It's very important to be able to start that engine again. And so I'm honored to be a part of it, to be a part of starting the movement towards making live theater happen again.
It's mid-September and it's Fashion Week in New York. Summer's over and Charlotte and Sophie are back from the Hamptons. They're getting made up.
Sophie and I also serve as editors of a magazine, The Daily Front Row, which is featured in the Hamptons, in New York City and LA. And today we're gonna start our day off with a lunch.
It's one of very few live events. Most of Fashion Week this year is happening online.
One really fun part about Fashion Week is getting all glammed up, because otherwise I don't wear any makeup really, and so that's always really fun. Do some of my arms as well.
If it is a normal Fashion Week, it's literally from morning to night, about 4 days to 5 days.
Like 4 shows and then
so
changes.
Then I'm a little nervous because they will get on each other's nerves and they will have fights, and so
And
I
will have a mental breakdown.
I have to be there to pick up the pieces. But this particular Fashion Week in COVID is so far going to be very relaxed.
Their father, Ian, is on his way to Central Park.
I want them both to have perspective. And I think in any situation, to be the best that you can be, you have to have perspective and understanding for the situation that you're in, the benefits that you have, the opportunities that you have, and not to take those things for granted. You used the word privilege. Do they really understand the privileges that they have? And, could they be doing more with that?
we don't feel privileged. We're lucky to be in our position, but
we have to wrap this
yeah,
up.
everything,
Yeah.
yeah.
We have to. No, we have to.
Okay.
Whitefield, New Hampshire. The town of 2,200 has hardly any COVID cases. Kevin Smith Kirkwood is getting ready for the premiere.
It's amazing to be up here. Because I already love the place and because I think it's safer, I was instantly able to just sort of exhale a little bit.
The theatre is one of the first in the whole country to open up again. Kevin has had to quarantine and get tested, like everyone on his team.
We're rehearsing in the rehearsal room in masks, and trying to sing and dance this show in a rehearsal mask, not easy. But we did what was necessary.
Oh, I just dream about it all the time.
We did have to make some concessions artistically because of the pandemic. We knew that we couldn't let Audrey and Seymour kiss.
The big day is here. Theatregoers are only allowed in to see the performance under the tightest safety measures. Television teams aren't allowed in under the new rules. Kevin's done it. He's restored a little bit of normality in the midst of a pandemic.
We're successful. Everybody's healthy. Things are clean. The theater's sanitized. And people came tonight and sat and watched and laughed together. It was amazing.
It's October, and the city is trying to get back on its feet. 6 months ago, this was the epicenter of the pandemic. New Yorkers are still traumatized. Anyone outside without a mask is viewed as antisocial. Masks are only taken off to eat at the newly established curbside restaurants. They're allowed to fill a quarter of inside seating, but few people take the opportunity. The number of people applying for unemployment benefit has dropped again sharply, but it's still 8 times what it was in 2019. Empty office blocks across the city has meant many smaller businesses reliant on office workers have had to close. New York is facing a massive tax deficit with no end in sight. And despite all the health precautions, some districts are seeing a rise in coronavirus cases again. People line up for food in every part of town. Without a job, savings are spent on rent, and it's the poorest who are left struggling to survive. For many, it's worse than 9/11, previously the worst catastrophe to hit New York.
9/11 targeted particular parts of the city, but it didn't shut down the whole economy, and it certainly didn't go on for so many months. There was a lot of emphasis on getting things back to normal as soon as possible, and that obviously this pandemic isn't over.
Isaac and Emerita Ramoon still feel trapped in their apartment. Emerita doesn't want her son to go back to school in case he catches the virus. Homeschooling is made possible thanks to an iPad from school and an old computer.
This stay the same. Okay, I was just making sure.
Whoever put this yellow one.
I don't really like being inside. Mostly I'm distracted by games or watching a show. If I don't play games or watch a show, I just sit in my bed and do nothing. But yeah, it gets lonely. A lot.
Emerita hasn't found a new job and she's broke. Soon, she won't be able to afford this apartment.
Now I'm not receiving anything because of the pandemic agreement that the government is doing is on a pause. Besides that, my faith is still strong. I'm smiling and I'm taking one day at a time instead of planning out my life. You can't plan anymore. You just have to go with the days.
Her ambition is to finally get out of the Bronx. The Bickleys are meeting for dinner.
Hey, welcome back! Thanks, Mom. It was so fun.
It's not long until the presidential election. It's a topic that they prefer to avoid discussing with some of their friends.
So excited to be.
We don't talk about politics.
What? Oh, friends?
No, I'm saying, there's a lot of closet There's a lot of closet Republicans.
The effects of the pandemic have made the Bickleys reflect. Sophie has her doubts now about the world of influencers.
It makes me want to go into where I can tutor kids that can't be tutored or don't have laptops or don't have parents who can help educate them. It makes me want to really do more.
I think the gap between the poor, the rich, and certainly even the middle is a huge margin, but the gap has become too large and people are suffering. That's what I think the president has to really work on.
The pandemic has exacerbated it, in my opinion, and brought it even more to light, but the underlying issues were there before.
Popcorn for the televised debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Kevin is concerned about the election and the future of his country.
We're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made.
I am one of the people whose lives will be affected directly by the choices that are made in our country. I don't have cushion. I'm an artist, you know? I don't come from a trust fund family. I'm an artist, I'm a black man, I'm a queer man, you know? And so these kinds of decisions affect me seriously, you know?
Despite the crisis, Kevin Smith Kirkwood has achieved his big debut. But Broadway remains closed for now. Financially, Emerita Ramoon is at rock bottom, but remains optimistic. The Bickley family has gained a new perspective on their city and their life. 3 lives, 3 worlds, 1 city. The contrast existed long before the pandemic, but the coronavirus has amplified it and cemented the gaping division in society. Not just in New York, exposed as the metropolis of inequality, but also across the whole country. A challenge facing the United States and its new president.